Hello everyone. So I am on the back deck today and we're pulling the first annuals from the garden. Now obviously during the season I removed anything that was covered in powdery mildew, like my zinnias or anything that died on its own, but this is the first time where I'm pulling plants in anticipation for the end of the garden season, and I'm a mix of being ready because some of them look a little rough and not being ready because it's still nice enough to spend the mornings out here on the back deck, and I'm not ready to see blank spaces in the garden, but it has to be done. Now I do garden on a rooftop deck, so I do have to get to the garden waste out from here and down. So I'll talk a little bit about how I do that. But first I'm gonna walk you around the back deck. We're gonna focus on the back deck today, walk you around, show you what I'm gonna pull today, what I'm definitely gonna pull probably in the next month, and then what I'm going to overwinter or just try to leave out here. So I'm currently standing where I would walk out from the house on my deck. We are 3 stories up, so this rooftop deck is on top of the second story. And just to give you an idea of layout, because after my last video on the new garage deck garden, some people were asking about how they are all situated together. So this faces the back, that's why I call it the back deck. I know I'm very, very clever. But if you go over here, you can see the top of the pergola right there. So that is the new garage deck. So that's on top of the first story. We are on top right now of the second story. I would love to have a slide installed from one to the other, but I feel like that's probably a safety issue. This border over here, so there are 3 boxes in the back with my Angelonia and the Impatiens. These I'm leaving for now. They still look good, so I don't want to pull those yet. In front are perennials. These will most likely be moved down to the garage. This pot, I'm just kind of over it. I'm really mostly over the stuff that doesn't have irrigation in it, so I am going to get rid of that. Back here, well, sadly, I do have to empty this border because bulbs get planted in here. So I'll be doing bulb planting probably in the next few weeks. I'm not going to empty it out today, but it's going to happen soon. The plant I'm most sad about right now, obviously right here, is the celosia. Mostly because the bees still love it. It still looks pretty, but either I'm going to cut it down and just have a bunch to save, harvest all the seeds, or maybe I'll leave one, but like plop it in another pot to let it dry and have some visual interest in the garden over winter. I don't know, but when things are pretty still, it's hard for me to pull. The evergreen, that's going to stay out here and hopefully live. And then down here, I think you can see, that is all dead. So if I know I'm going to pull something that already wasn't on irrigation, I just kind of let it dry out. There were petunias and superbena. The budworms have just eaten everything, so I let that one dry out. This one is on irrigation, but I think I'm going to empty it out as well. These 2 pots still look good. They're going to stay. And also there are peonies in here that I need to see if they lived. I just planted the peonies this spring, so it's not like they sprouted that much above the soil. So we'll see if they're still under there somewhere. This one I might pull as well. And then that's another one that I just let die out. So 4 containers back here. These will all, I don't know if they're all my gray ones or not, but I think they will all have bulbs in them as well that I will store either in the garage or the greenhouse out here. All of my dahlias back here, these will be cut down and overwintered in the garage in the grow bags. Again, all of these very specific overwintering tasks I will make a whole video on. I probably have videos from last year for most of these, and I will link those down below if you want to get a head start before I get started. But everything back there will be in the garage. This, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to empty it out today or not, because the petunias are pretty much gone, but it's like a big pot that if it's empty, I don't know how I'm going to feel, so we'll see. But this is the main thing I'm going to empty out today, is my bucket planter. I want to try to save the morning glory because it's still blooming, and this is the first year I've had blooms on my morning glory back here. I have grown from the same exact seed packet over the last 3 years, and in the same spot, didn't bloom, blooming like crazy right now. So I'm gonna see if I can keep that. The only issue is I haven't been keeping on top of trimming it, and it has grown around and in some of these plants, so we're gonna kind of see what happens. Now I am gonna empty out all of the buckets completely. I had an idea of maybe doing some Christmas decorations in it, but I think that's just too much. I probably won't actually see it very much over the winter, so I'm just going to empty it out for now, and then we'll see what I feel like doing after that. The only other things out here then are my hydrangeas, which most of these I plan to overwinter in the garage. So I guess really it's the bucket planter, a few pots, and then the back raised beds a different day when I am ready to plant my bulbs. Now I have my pruners and a little basket out here because what I'm going to do first, well, let's get up closer to the bucket planter. There were a bunch of petunias. Again, the budworms came in and ate all my flowers. I am going to harvest some of the remaining impatiens. I'm going to try to press them. Now, from my experience, they don't hold their color very well. They basically turn brown, but I like having brown flowers as well when I'm using them in design, so I'm going to do that. And this gomphrena is not looking great, so I'm just going to pull that. I'm going to save some seeds, but from one up front, so that I'm just going to pull, and then I am going to try to save the gomphrena carmine here because those still look good. So I'm going to harvest these and dry them. So I'm going to do that first before I empty everything out, and then we'll get to pulling. Let's see what we got here. This gomphrena is actually growing in this pot, but the morning glory's been taking it that way and strangling it. So I'm just going to go in and cut all of the flowers that still look good enough to dry at least. Now I'm going to harvest the flowers off of this is the Selenia apricot. Was I saying impatiens? I think I was saying impatiens this whole time. This is the Selenia apricot begonia. Ignore me. The sun patients are the ones that are in the containers in front of my raised beds that are still looking really pretty. So let's get these out. And again, these are a really beautiful color. Well, that one has some deformed petals, but from my experience, this is probably just going to dry brown, but I use those a lot anyway, especially in winter. So sometimes I'll make cards with pressed flowers. I'll make like little lanterns for candles. And in the winter, I don't mind having brown pressed flowers. I actually think that it fits the season. So that's what I harvested to press. And now we empty out the buckets. So I use trash bags that are made for yard waste because they're a little bit more durable, so the plants don't tear the bag as easily. I probably won't have as much of an issue with these because these aren't woody plants, but anything that has a woody stem or thorns can poke through the bag. Now I have to take my waste through the house because there's no outdoor access from these decks, so everything has to go down through the house, which is why I really don't want any bags to tear and spill. So I have to take this down 2 flights and then out to the alley for the yard waste pickup. So that is why I try my best to not leave a mess through the house. First thing I'm going to do is try to find all of the irrigation, and I'm going to twist it all the way to the right, which turns this one off. I would recommend, if you're growing in containers or really anything, just because of the flexibility, but get some sort of irrigation system where each individual emitter you can turn up or down to adjust the flow. That way, once this is empty, which it will be, I can turn this all the way off. My irrigation system can still run and water the rest of the plants, the rest of the containers that still have plants, but I'm not wasting water in empty containers. So once I do that, with this bottom row, I'm just going to toss them back there. Now for my irrigation system, I do bring the timers inside because you have to. The actual like tubes and emitters I leave out. If you want them to last, you probably should bring them inside, but I've left them out for the last few years now, and I've maybe only replaced like a few emitters, and that's it. So ease for me is just to leave it outside. That is what I do. So let's see if this whole thing, yep, that's what I imagined was going to happen. Just the whole root ball there. If there was any extra soil, which I imagine because these were smaller containers, the root ball would take up all of the soil. If there was extra soil and the plants weren't diseased, I do save it. So right now I'd probably toss it in like the elevated beds along the back wall, but this way I can reuse it and just refresh it with some compost because I do not replace all of my soil every year. I would not garden if I had to take all the soil, especially in the larger containers, down, dispose of it somewhere, and then bring all new bags of soil back up here. And again, I've been doing that since 2020 and I haven't had any issues. I have videos on that too, how I refresh my soil. I will do that again this coming spring, but so far, so good. So let's take these out. Probably will need another bag. I do also have a composter, but it's a small tumbler composter out here on the back deck, and it is already full. So the majority of what I take from my garden cannot fit into my composter. So we are one row down, and something else that I have to make sure of that is important is that I can carry the bag myself downstairs. So if it gets too heavy, that makes it much more difficult. So occasionally I will lift the bag just to make sure I still can carry it downstairs. And if you do have some plants in here, if you let them, I mean, a lot of these are already dried out, but if you let them wilt and dry out more sitting in the bag, that should also make it lighter. So sometimes I'll leave the bag out if it's not projected to rain for a few days, and then it's a little bit lighter to carry downstairs. But so far, so good, but we're getting close to my weight limit. Okay, we're getting close, so I think I'm gonna need a second bag. All right, I think you are the least intertwined with the morning glory. Let's get you out. This was all something that could have been avoided had I kept up on my maintenance, but I didn't. Actually, that wasn't too bad. Now I do want to get the morning glory out from the gutter. This roof too. And honestly, I don't mind if it just kind of wraps around this for however much longer I decide to leave it there. Moving over to this border, first thing that's coming out are these impatiens, which I got those from the Ball Horticultural event. So even though they were pretty, I'm not quite as attached to them, so I'm not too terribly sad to lose them compared to things that I've started from seed. Now for the Super Bina and Super Tunia, let's see if the whole root ball comes out or just some of it. Oh, nope, whole thing coming out. Okay. All right. Actually, this I'm going to set over here for now. Got this one that I let dry out. All right, the other one I let completely dry out. Come on. There we go. Oh, yeah. And now we sweep all of that mess that we just made up. And what I will do later on in the season, like as the garden is more and more empty, I do have a shop vac that works outside. So I'll bring that out and do like a more thorough clean. But for now, I'm just going to sweep. So now what I like to do, since I have moved some things around, is just resituate, because I still want my garden to look pretty. So if I can hide the empty spots by just shifting things around. So I'm going to move the pot with the impatiens just over to the center of the center bed. The other ones over in front of the dahlia grow bags, right there. Same thing over here. And you know what? I might actually see if I can just pull this one plant out of there. There we go. This was the Super Bells that again has been eaten by the budworms. Now, I feel like I need more height in this bed here, because this is where, well, I already pulled a salvia. This is where a bunch of my China asters died. So while the sides are still pretty tall with the celosia, I feel like there's stuff missing here. So let me think about what I can set in there. I'm done emptying out and moving what I'm going to do today, and this is what we're looking like right now. So let's head over to this border. I went ahead and just shifted the 3 pots with the impatiens a little bit more towards the center because I really can't see much of the sides from this viewpoint. And then I put up here the 2 quickfires, 2 tiny quickfire hydrangeas, which those leaves are turning yellow for the fall, so they'll add some yellow back here. They're just in the pots on top of the dirt in the beds where there were some empty holes. So I do need to remember, because the beds are in irrigation, but the pots of hydrangeas are not. So we'll remember to water those manually like I have been doing. But if you have pots sitting around and empty spaces in beds, just throw a pot on there. I also moved down to my perennials here, but those are going to be stored in the garage, but I thought the color would look nice. So that's what we have going on over here. I have the gray pots that will be planted with tulip bulbs back there. They're going to stay here because I'm going to plant those up in just a few weeks. On my table, I have gomphrena to dry, flowers to press. I also grabbed some of the pink cashmere superbena flowers along with the begonia. I've never dried the superbena before, so I'll be interested to see how they hold their color. Once I do like a big drying harvest, I'll show you all my flowers and everything and how I do that. But I do love using these throughout the winter. So those are the only ones I'm bringing inside. All of my saucers and plant lifts I store on the front deck on my flower cart, so I'll carry those through the house out there. I have left this one for now, just because I didn't want to not have the color of the green sweet potato vine, but I can probably pull those petunias at some point soon. And then this, so an empty bucket planter, but just cover it with morning glory. So that's what we're gonna do for now. I have had some people ask if I would ever just throw the plants over the edge of the wall because they will land on the ground. I would never throw anything heavy, like anything that had a root ball, because our windows are on the house there and I could just see somehow one angling and breaking a window. I have, though, tossed over, for example, when I've cut my zinnia stalks, but I bring the root balls down in the bag, I'll toss the zinnia stalks over. However, what I have found, so if I throw it that way, it's right in front of the garage, well, behind the garage. If I throw it that way, there's the sidewalk that runs between our house and the neighbors, but it's ours. So that's how you get around to the back. So it's not like I'm throwing it into someone else's yard. But what I have found is that if I throw things now, then they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, and I forget about them. So I try my best to, when I'm removing things from the garden, I bag it up and bring it down right then. Because if I don't, like I said, I will probably forget about it. Now, as far as the garage deck, now I'm trying to have more perennials up there. So hopefully there won't be as much waste, but that's going to be easier to just toss things over the side because it's right there. I mean, it's only 1 story up. So that will probably be my plan for there. At some point in the future, I do want to get stairs from the garage deck down because you can only still access all of the 3 decks from inside our house, which when we have the garden tours means that you can't access any of the decks. So at some point, and just for ease of carrying things around, it would be nice if you could stay outside and at least go from the ground level to the garage deck just 1 story up. So I don't know when that'll happen, hopefully sometime in the next few years, but that is everything. And I don't feel too bad. I thought I would feel worse, but it's still pretty full of color, and now I just have more space, so I don't feel quite as claustrophobic up here. But that's gonna be everything for today. Oh no, it's not. One last thing, if you are in Chicago, when you do yard waste pickup, you can request it. So if you have the Chicago 311 app, you can make a yard request pickup, and that is what I do. So get the app if you're in the Chicago area, and you will have some garden waste. But other than that, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.